Our memory verse for the week comes from Jeremiah 15, verse 21. It says, I will deliver you from the power of evil people and redeem you from the control of the ruthless. Welcome to Christian Boy Podcast. Today is a bit of a sad day, just a little bit. It's the last episode of Exodus. We've come a long way. It's nearly been a year and some time that we've been in Exodus, mainly on my part. That's my fault. I apologize. We should have been done with Exodus so long ago. But things been happening. A lot of stuff has been happening. Next week, I get married. So there's that. If you want to see the video of the proposal, I think I might link it down below. So check that out. And yeah, I'm getting married. Different things are happening in my life. I'm in grad school. So those are some of my reasons for not doing the videos when I should have been doing them. But it is what it is. I apologize for that. Let's get into this episode. So Exodus chapter 40 has 38 verses in there. And that's not a lot of verses. This is the final chapter of Exodus. And we're just going to read it and go through it. So let's get right on this chapter in the Christian Boy Podcast. So it says in verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses, you are to set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, on the first day of the month. Put the ark of the testimony there and screen off the ark with the veil. Then bring in the table and lay out its arrangements. Also bring in the lampstand and set up its lamps. Place the gold altar for incense in front of the ark of the testimony. Put up the screen for the entrance to the tabernacle. Position the altar of burnt offering in front of the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. Place the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it. Assemble the surrounding courtyard and hang the screen for the gate of the courtyard. Take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and everything in it. Consecrate along with it all its furnishings so that it will be holy. Anoint the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils. Consecrate the altar so that it will be especially holy. Anoint the basin and its stand and consecrate it. Then bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance to the tent of meeting and wash them with water. Clothe Aaron with the holy garments, anoint him and consecrate him, so that he can serve me as priest. Have his sons come forward and clothe them in tunics. Anoint them just as you anointed their father, so that they may also serve me as priests. Their anointing will serve to inaugurate a permanent priesthood for them throughout their generations. Moses did everything just as the Lord had commanded him. The tabernacle was set up in the first month of the second year on the first day of the month. Moses set up the tabernacle, laid its bases, positioned its planks, inserted its crossbars, and set up its post. Then he spread the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering of the tent on top of it, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Moses took the testimony and placed it in the ark and attached the poles to the ark. He set the mercy seat on top of the ark. He brought the ark into the tabernacle, put up the veil for the screen, and screened off the ark of the testimony, just as the Lord had commanded him. Moses placed the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the tabernacle, outside the veil. He arranged the bread on it before the Lord, just as the Lord had commanded him. He also put the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle, and set up the lamps before the Lord, just as the Lord had commanded him. Moses also installed the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the veil, and burned fragrant incense on it, just as the Lord had commanded him. He put the screen at the entrance to the tabernacle. Then he placed the altar of burnt offering at the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and he offered the burnt offering and the grain offering on it, just as the Lord had commanded him. He set the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it for washing. Moses, Aaron, and his sons washed their hands and their feet from it. They washed whenever they came to the tent of meeting and approached the altar, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Next, Moses set up the surrounding courtyard for the tabernacle and the altar and hung a screen for the gate of the courtyard. Moses finished the work. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses was unable to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud rested on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. The Israelites set out whenever the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle throughout all the stages of their journey. If the cloud was not taken up, they did not set out until the day it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle day by day, and there was a fire inside the cloud by night, visible to the entire house of Israel throughout all stages of their journey. So this was Exodus chapter 40, an interesting end to this interpretation, into this writing that Moses has for us. And there's only a few things for me to say about this chapter. You've been hearing me say this for a little while now, and it has something to do with obedience. We see that Moses did everything that the Lord told him to do. They set up everything just as the Lord had told them in the previous chapters, built everything to the specifications that God had given them. And finally, they consecrated Aaron and the priesthood of the Levites and all this stuff that God told them to do in this chapter. And when they did all these things that God had commanded them to do, we see the benefits of obeying God. What was the benefit that they had? Well, verse 34 says it perfectly. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. This is their reward for all their hard work. God having a place to dwell among them, and God being able to be close to them in all their situations or whatever's going on. So my question is, are we being obedient to God? Now, me personally, I've had a few issues where I was disobedient. Even now, I have a few issues where I'm dealing with disobedience and dealing with temptation and pushing of my flesh to do what I want to do. Like right now, I want to watch TV or instead of praying or journaling or reading my Bible. Our acts of obedience lead us closer to God's presence and allows him to come closer to us. And through those acts of obedience, we are rewarded. Their reward was proximity and closeness to God. Our reward is the same, proximity and closeness to God, being able to see God's presence, feel God's presence, and be near him. So my question to you once again is, are you being obedient? Because obedience leads to proximity, and proximity leads to seeing God's face. So let's work on being obedient, just as Moses and the Israelites were at this time in Exodus. They built the temple as they should have. They built the tabernacle as they should have. And as a reward, God was able to be among them and to dwell among them. So if we want God to dwell in our lives, Jesus in our hearts, and to live for him, let us continue to stay connected and stay close to God and to Christ, and to stay with him and obey what he has to do, say to us, and he will be able to dwell with us and live close to us. That's all I got to say about this chapter. This was a great book. Catch us next week for the recap of the book and the entire book, and then we'll see where we go from there. I'm gonna be on my newlywed stuff, so I might not be on there as much. But yeah, it's gonna be a few weeks before we get into another book. Let me know, what book should we go to next? Should we continue on into Leviticus? Should we go into another chapter somewhere else? What should we do? Let me know what you think. All right. That's it for this Exodus chapter 40. Remember to obey God so that he can be close to you and you can grow closer to him. All right. See you on the next one.